We are now recording today's session. Today we'll be presenting on what's new in V8, version 8 of MP Studio, MP Author, MP Author Professional. A large part of that is working with Fragments. So I've asked Mike Sargent to join us today. Mike is one of our lead developers and instrumental in the development of pretty much all the products that you'll see at Silex Software, more specifically MP Studio, MP Author, and MP Author Professional. I have a few slides I'd like to share with you before I turn things over to Mike. I also want to point out that we do have joining us today Ian, and Ian is going to be working in the background diligently responding to any questions you might have. So by all means, there is an option in the right-hand side you'll see where you can submit questions, and we'll do our best to get those answered today. Anything that does not get answered today, we'll provide in a follow-up email. So keep that in mind. There are also some handouts that are available to you. You can download those at any time and have a look at those. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have any problems with the webinar, you can email info@silac.com. We will send out a link to the recording afterwards, so you will have that as a reference. I will offer up a discount code, and I'll tell you what that's about. We are hosting a one-day course on authoring management packs. Okay, so this will be a level 200, 300 course on using Silac tools to author your management packs. And the list price for that is $495. With this disc code, you can get a $200 discount on that. So remind me to give you that. I'll send it in the chat window later. Again, questions, submit those in the chat window and the question window, and get those answered. And during the webinar, I have a few polls I'm going to run. We'll run a couple of those right at the start. For those of you new to Silex Software, we were founded in 2003. So we're beyond 14 years now working in this market with...
Randy?
Yes?
You're not sharing your screen yet.
Well, that would be important the minute I start talking.
There you go.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so Silex was founded in 2003. And since then, we've got well over 6,000 users of our software. Our list of products have grown from reporting solutions to full authoring tools, which Mike is going to share with you today, and also compliance monitoring, reporting, and remediation software. Just to the right, you can see the list of products. The High Trust Pack is an application that's used to monitor HIPAA compliance. So people in the healthcare industry might be interested in that. In the ISCOM side, we've got MP Author, the free version, MP Author Professional, and MP Studio. For configuration manager users, we have CP Studio, which is designed for authoring baselines. Last but not least, we have Compliance Manager, and that will monitor various controls for compliance and report on that, and it also offers remediation. Silex Software also offers custom services, so if you would like some help developing management packs or fragments, we can do that for you. Baselines, we can offer those for our customers. We also support our clients with their OMS requirements. If you're setting up a POC and you'd like some help or you're ready for deployment, we're also red carpet partners with Microsoft, so we can help with your Power BI requirements. And if you're ready for Azure, we can also help you with that. So I did mention over 6,000 users. We're approaching 7,000 users of our software now. Briefly, MP Author is wizard driven, and you can create basic targets, monitors, and rules. You can also create vendor knowledge. So it's a free application. Probably each of you on the call today have already had a look at that, but you can just fill out the form and you'll get the download link via email, and you're off. However, if you're looking for more advanced authoring capabilities, maybe you want to author SNMP-based management packs, or you'd like to leverage the fragments you'll see here today, you'll need at least MP Author Professional for that. And then there's MP Studio. MP Studio contains all of Professional, so all the advanced authoring pieces. I won't do a demo of MP Studio specifically today, but Mike will be using advanced authoring features to show you fragment support, which is in MP Studio and MP Author Professional. Briefly, some of the other features in MP Studio that allow you to develop some process around your authoring experience and repeatable process, things like documentation, being able to share information about the configuration of a management pack, version control, so you can go and get a previous version of an MP if you need it to deploy into a management group, or you simply want the auditing capabilities so you can share an audit history report or show change management committee what's changed in the new MP you want to deploy. Override management is important. That's how you customize your management packs. So, vendor ships that management pack, but you need to tweak it for your environment. MP Studio is simply the best and fastest way to manage your overrides. You can create overrides individually or in bulk. So that's very nice capability. Testing is a simulation, but you actually run that test harness against a server or servers in your production environment if you want. Collect perf1 data, event data, registry information, WMI information, and then you compare that against the configuration of the management pack during, say, a 1-hour test. MP Studio will show you the 20% of the elements that are going to generate 80% of your alerts. So very powerful way to help you tune the management packs before you put them in production, and thus eliminating or significantly reducing any noise. And your support teams will appreciate that. There is the ability within MP Studio to compare any two management packs. That allows you to find out what's been added, what's been deleted, and what's been changed. So let's say a vendor adds a new monitor, and that monitor might be configured in a way such that it's going to generate tons of unnecessary alerts. So you can run the comparison, find out what's been added, and say, oh, I better check out that new monitor. We'll see if it needs an override or not. Then there's the group comparison. This allows you to take the big picture view of all your management groups and the version of MPs in there compared to the master copy in the store database. So MP Studio Store database becomes your central source for deployment, and you can compare versions and then actually synchronize right from that group comparison report. Workflow report, this gives you a really great way to find out what's running on your servers. You can run this report against dozens or more, hundreds of agents, and it will report back what rules, monitors, and discoveries are running, and it'll even show you effectively what overrides are applied to any of those elements. So if you want to see any of that, that's a lot of information on MP Studio. That's all outside of the authoring stuff you'll see here today. I'm happy to set up a one-on-one demo where we don't necessarily have to rush through it. I want to save time for Mike to really go into details about what's new in version 8. So a key part of that is fragments. I've got this slide here just to hit home for everybody and get us all on the same page what a fragment is. It's just a piece of XML. Okay, I'm going to simplify by saying just a piece of XML. But you don't have to work in XML in order to use a fragment. It contains the working parts for a specific workflow of a management pack. And the nice thing about it is you can reuse a fragment over and over. So you might have multiple services as part of an application, and you can just import the fragment for a service monitor that generates an alert. And as Mike will show you, you can easily populate that fragment with the information you need for each service, and then hit the finish button, and it creates the monitor for you. So you can easily customize your workflow by modifying a few properties within that fragment. And fragments, well, Kevin Holman is the guy who's popularized the use of fragments. more traditionally, you would use VSAE to work with fragments to create your management packs. However, in MP Studio, as you'll find out, it's a lot easier than doing that in VSAE. So you don't have to learn VSAE in order to work with fragments. You can use MP Author Professional or Studio. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to now just take a minute. I'm going to share up a couple of short polls before we turn things over to Mike to get started. And I'll ask you to just take a minute and respond to these polls. And we'll give about 30 seconds for those responses to come in. If you should be able to see that up on your screen, and I see we are getting answers now. We'll let that run for just a little bit longer. We've got about 63% of you have already voted, and I think that works for me. So let's close that off. I'm going to share that up, and you should be able to see that.
Yes, we can see the results.
Oh, good, because I can't see it. Okay, so we've got 67%. Well, I can see a smaller version. 67% you say yes, so that's cool. Okay, so let's go on to the next quick poll here. And just a little bit curious about your experience. How many of you have actually worked with fragments? We'll let this run a little bit. We've got 50% of the votes in already. I'd like to see that get up a little bit higher. Okay, so I'm going to close that one off. I'm going to share that up. So we've got 33% have said yes, they've worked with fragments to create a management pack, which is pretty cool, and 67% who have yet to do that. So that's good information. Okay, let me just double check, Mike, and see if there's another. Okay, we'll get one more question in here. And this is about your use for creating management packs. What tools have you used? You should be able to select one or more of these options. Okay, we've got 75% of the votes in. So 70% have used SCOM console, about 43% have used SADC products, 14% have used VSAE, 43% of you I know just absolutely love the SCOM 2007 authoring console, and 14% have dabbled in XML. I'm sure that was fun. Okay, I'm going to close that off, Mike, and we'll hand things over to you and make you the presenter. Just a reminder, you can ask questions during the session today, and we'll do our best to get those answered as we go through Mike's presentation.
And everybody should be able to see my screen and hear me now.
Can see your screen and can hear you well. Thanks, Mike.
Excellent. Thank you, Randy. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. So we'll be discussing what's new in version 8. The changes for version 8 were largely to do with fragments. I will show a couple of things that were also changed, but mostly it was fragment support. And just a bit of background on that. In version 7.2, we put in the ability to import fragments. That is to take a fragment file, provide some parameter values for it, and generate elements that are part of your workflow for a management pack. With version 8, we have enhanced the import functions. We've added more browsers, but we've also put in a lot of support on the overall picture for managing fragments and for creating fragments. And we'll look at all of those things very shortly. As always, there's a number of performance improvements and bug fixes that have gone into the release. But let's get into this right away. Now, Kevin Holman has been the largest provider of fragments so far, and he has allowed us to host his fragment library on GitHub. Now, what we have now is a Manage Fragments dialog here that you get from the Tools menu. I'm just going to go through a couple of parts here. One thing we have is we define sort of a root search folder for fragments. And by default, we're going to use your My Documents folder, and we create a /fragment style folder underneath that. You can change that if you want to, but you probably don't need to. The next thing you'll do, and I've already done it, so you don't quite see it the same way that you will normally, is you'd click the Download Fragments from Fragment Library from GitHub button. And when I do that, we go to GitHub, we download a zip file that has all these fragments on it, we unpack it, and we populate a bunch of folders. Now, as I say, you already see the list in the list here. I'm going to click it, and it just tells me that they were all up to date. If we had updated some fragments since the last time I did this, added some, deleted some, it would give a summary on what's actually changed. If you've never done it before, it'll give you something like 63 fragments added or something like that. Just to quickly go through this is a list of fragments by file name, folder, and a description. You can sort these if you want. So most of them came from Kevin Holman. We've put a couple in from Select, and I have a couple in my fragments folder, and I'll be talking a lot about my fragments a little later. The other thing, of course, is when you hover over it, you get to see the full description that we pull out of the fragment, give you a better idea of what it's going to do. So for instance, this Unix file exists fragment includes a class of discovery for a Unix/Linux application based on the existence of a directory and config file. So that helps you find things. But we've also put in a search filter which appears here and also can show up in the import button to help you find what you're looking for. And so we allow you to search for a number of different ways. We can do a full text search here. So if we want to see things that are using WMI, we just have to type in the letters WMI, and we filter the list down to the 4 fragments that currently do anything with WMI. We can also select fragments based on the type of elements that they'll create. So if we only want to see the fragments which will create monitors, a quick click and we'll get that. We can actually do combinations here. This is an AND test. So if we want things that create monitors and recoveries, there we are. Those will create a service monitor with a recovery. So that'll help you filter that down. We can also go by the various parameter names in a fragment. Now, I haven't shown you what a fragment looks like yet, but say we want things that are using performance counters. So if I click on counter name, it'll show me all the scripts that use counter name, and those are ones that are going to be obviously using performance counters, monitors, and rules. And we also have keywords that we are putting in. So if you wanted to find stuff that was created by Kevin Holman, this will show you ones where Kevin Holman has a keyword of his name in their author. Kevin hasn't finished updating all of his fragments to have the keywords in there yet, so that's why we don't have currently the one. But if you only wanted to find fragments that Select had created, you could do that. We're also trying to put information in here about the workflow. So if you want SNMP monitors, you can click on the workflow there. This is something that will evolve over time, and we'll see more of that later. It'll be more useful as we get more things. You can select one or more fragments from this list, and when you select at least one, you get some buttons down here on the bottom that are enabled: Edit, Rename, and Delete. I'm not going to talk too much about the rename and delete because I'm pretty sure you can guess what those do. What I will do, though, is I'll actually try the delete here. I wanted to get rid of this, this particular fragment anyways, and it's gone. Rename is probably pretty easy, so we won't deal with that. We do have the ability to edit a fragment. So when I click Edit, we bring up this Edit Fragment dialog, and we're going to look at this in a lot more detail later, but I'll just give you a quick look at what this looks like. We have a header here with the description, a modified, a version number, and a modified date here. We have a list of the parameters that need to be replaced, referenced MPs that must be in there. And then we have the XML that's actually the fragment itself. Excuse me. Can never get to the cough button fast enough. You'll note here that we have things with double crunches around them, so company ID and app name. And those are the parameters that would be replaced. So when you import this, you would replace company ID with your name, and you'll create a unique ID for your company for this new view. And while I don't want to go into this in any great detail at this time, you can certainly do this. Now you can edit this fragment and you can save it back, or you can save to a new folder. We'll be discussing this a bit more, but I just wanted to give you a quick look at that. The second thing you can do here is if you select more than one fragment, and let me just say, let me select a good set here. There is a class in Discovery Registry key exists, and that's just going to do a registry discovery. And a folder state alert view fragment here, which creates some of the views that you may need. As an example, you might want to always create your classes with a set of views. And so by using combine, you can take these two simpler fragments and combine them into one larger fragment. And we merge everything together here. So you'll note that we have information that you would have seen from a registry discovery and some class information here, which came from the second one. Here's our class type, which would have been from the discovery itself. And then down here, sorry, I've scrolled too far, there's the views that we brought in from that second fragment. And you would still need to do some more editing to this, but it does help you by merging the two together. That is largely all I want to talk about for the manage fragments thing, but basically it comes down to when you start up the first time, you may want to just bring this up, download the fragment library from GitHub, and then you may want to just browse to see what's available here. Kevin actually has quite a large number of fragments available already. There will be more, and we'll actually be doing allowing end users to submit fragments that we'll be including in this library. We'll be reviewing them, so we make sure that they're sufficient quality and don't do anything nasty. And we'll be publishing those so that when we update the fragment library, you'll be seeing new fragments that have been submitted from the community. So let's just close this off for the time being. So let's talk about a couple of things that we need to do in here. That's weird. Sorry, I'm just scrolling in a different window and it didn't seem to be scrolling, but now it's scrolling fine. For this demonstration, I'm just going to create a new management pack. You've probably all seen this, so I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. We'll just give this name select.demo. Next, we'll save it to the file system. We'll use SCOM 2016 references. We'll create an empty management pack, and we'll finish. And there we have our management pack has been created and opened. Now this is a completely empty management pack, no discoveries, no monitors. And we'll take care of that shortly. Just before we do that though, I want to show one thing that has changed. We've made some significant improvements to the WMI browser. Some of you may have dealt with it before and will see the differences. I'm just going to bring up the WMI browser so that you can see the changes here. We now have the ability here to change the computer that you're getting the WMI information from. Let's just browse. This always takes a moment to, well, actually almost a minute to expand the first time until it gets cached, so give it a second here. The previous way we were doing this was a bit confusing, especially here in step 3 where you're selecting the properties to fetch and what goes in the where clause. And so that has been significantly simplified, and it's now very obvious what you want to do. So here's a list of everything. I'm going to go down to Win32 logical disk because it demonstrates very well. I will retrieve the values, so you'll see all the disks that are on this machine. I have several. When I click on one, we fill in the values here on the right-hand side in step 3 so you can see what it is. Now here at the bottom is the expression that we're currently defining. The star says we would get all of the values. We may not want all of those values. So for instance, if we wanted to get the caption, we can just check caption here on this left column of checkboxes, and you'll see that the select is only getting a retrieve caption. So it returns less information, obviously is going to be faster. File system, I'm just going to put a couple more in here. You'll see what the results are here. So those are how you select what you need to return. I'm going to, okay. So the next thing we can do over here on the right-hand side is we can select which of these entries. So as you see on this system, I have, I don't know, 8 or 10 different drives on here. And some of them are hard disks and some of them are optical disks. Let's say we only want hard disks, and that's this drive type here. And drive type 3 is in fact a hard drive. That's this description here of local fixed disk tells the same thing. And let's just, there's another flag I was using here. Oh yes, compressed. Let's say we don't want compressed drives. So we can put in multiple conditions here. And if we actually wanted only compressed drives, we can come down and edit this. And when we say OK, all of mine must be compressed or something like that. Okay. So those are some significant improvements we've made to the WMI browser. I'm not going to continue this wizard. I just wanted to show those differences. And those changes are available in MP Author, Author Pro, and Studio. Now let's talk about fragments. So the import fragment dialog is where you're going to do everything. We have the ability to browse, and that lets you go through the file system and select a fragment. And what we've downloaded from GitHub is in a folder for Kevin Holman's fragments. We have a folder for Silac fragments where we've got 2 that we've added so far. We also have this placeholder right now for user submissions, and that's where user submitted fragments will go when we get that set up. We also have a My Fragments folder, and that one is a bit special in that we won't touch anything in there. So we recommend to people that when you create or modify an existing fragment, you store it in the My Fragments folder. Then if you download new stuff from GitHub, we can simply replace the existing things in Kevin's folder, the Silac folder, user submissions folders. Don't have to worry about clobbering any of the work you've done. So please use My Fragments for saving things. So browsing is one way of doing it, but we also have the search button here, which brings up what looks fairly familiar. Here's that same filter dialog. So if I wanted to do discoveries, there we are. And let's say I want to do a discovery by registry value. So I'm going to come up here and I'll select registry value name. No, I guess not. There we go. So here we are, all of the fragments that do registry discovery. Very easy to find them. We could have done it with text searches, etc. But just for this example, let's use this value exists one. So I can select it and click OK, or I'm pretty sure I can double click it. Let's just see. Yes. So it opens the fragment. And at the top here under parameters, we have a list of parameter values, parameter names, and the value that will be substituted in. Now, I have previously run this and it remembers the last values I have. So let me just delete those so you'll see what you would see the first time. So normally you would come in here and there'll be no values, and since values are required, you'll have the little red exclamation marks here. And that tells you need to put in values here. You'll note that we have a browse button for the registry value path, and that'll bring up a registry browser, and we'll demonstrate that very shortly. But down here in the preview, we have the actual fragment, and as we have values for the parameters, we'll replace them. So this is an example for our class type here right now. We have a company ID placeholder and an app name placeholder, and we will substitute those in, and we'll see those a bit later. And those are used in a number of places. So they're used for the class, they're used for the name of the discovery, referencing the name of the class itself. It's used for the attribute name down here, and we'll see those all substituted in a second. So for company name, there's no browser, so I'm just going to type in Silac. The nice thing about this is that from now on, whenever you bring up one of these dialogues, it'll always default to your company name for the company name here. And so you probably never need to type that a second time. As you can see down here in the preview window, now we've replaced company ID placeholder with the value we specified, select, in all the places it's used here. For our app name, we're just going to put in demo. And as soon as we move to the next thing, you'll see we filled that in, and there are fewer things that need to be filled in. The last thing that needs to go in is this registry path. Now, as is typical when you're doing registry discovery, it's often something in software that you're selecting. Yeah, let's not use that. Let's use my Canon scanner. And so I'm going to look for this product ID that tells me that the Canon scanner is installed on this machine. You probably would be more likely to be using a piece of software that's installed. But for the time being, we'll just use this. And so it substitutes in for this registry value path. Here it shows you that it'll be looking for this product ID exists. That tells me that a Canon scanner is installed, and therefore we know that we can run other rules against this because this system would happen to have that all defined. The target here is Windows operating system, so this will work with any Windows computer that's running a server operating system, in fact, which is going, well, it wouldn't actually work on my machine because I'm running a client operating system, but that's immaterial. A couple other things to show here. You'll note that the preview is colorized for the XML. If you don't like that, you can turn it off. I personally like it, so we'll leave it on. I think the default is in fact off, so you'll want to just right-click and turn that on. The other thing you'll notice here is that, for example, this class type element, we've wrapped after the first attribute, so all the attributes are on separate lines. What this does is tends to make a very tall XML document versus a very wide document. But some people don't like that, so you can turn the attribute wrapping off, and that class type, which was previously about 6 lines on the screen, is now 1 line on the screen. But of course you have to scroll to the right to see the whole thing. Again, this is a personal preference, but we give you the option for that. Before we import it, there's a couple other things worth noting here. We can click the download fragment from GitHub library here, and it'll do the same thing with the default path. That's perfectly acceptable here. You can also edit the XML. Now what you see here is a preview. So you'll see that select.demo has been replaced in here, replacing the company ID and the app name. But you may need to go in and modify the XML before you import it. Typically, anything using scripts, you'll need to do that. This is not an editable window. That's me trying to type, and we don't allow changes there, because normally this is simply replacing parameters. So all you want to do is specify the parameter values. But if you need to edit the XML before you check it in, or before you import it, you can bring it up in Edit. You'll note that this is the non-preview version of the fragment, in that we have the parameters still here. They haven't been substituted in. And at this point, you can change things like, for instance, if the attribute type, if you weren't checking for an existence, you were checking for a string, you could change that. You could change the frequency here. Let's say instead of that's once a day, let's say we wanted to check this once an hour. I can save that, and you will note that our frequency is now once an hour. So you do have the ability to make changes to the underlying fragment without changing the fragment itself. So we've loaded a copy off of disk, you're changing the currently used copy, and we'll talk about editing the fragment if you wanted to make a permanent change. So if I click import here, that quickly it has created a class, and if we look, there's the XML for the class, and you'll note select.demo class here. It's also created a discovery, and you'll note that the frequency here is 1 hour. I changed that from once a day to once an hour. That got taken, and if we were to look at the XML here, certainly not necessary, we'll see that we substituted in select.demo. Here's the path that we had specified looking at that product ID from the Canon scanner, etc. So that's how quickly, well, sorry, as I'm demonstrating it, I probably took 10 minutes to do that. I was going to say that's how quickly you can add something, but of course that wasn't a fairly quick demonstration here. That's a pretty good overview of importing. What I want to do now is take a look at actually creating fragments or editing fragments. Now, I'm just going to save this guy. I'm going to open a separate MP. I'm actually opening a SQL management server for monitoring SQL 2014 management pack. But this same thing works with any management pack, sealed or unsealed. The idea here is to be able to take something from an existing management pack, some workflow that you like, and be able to turn that into a fragment so it can be reused. You may have created a management pack. You may have used the SCOM 2007 authoring console to create a complex workflow that you want to be able to reuse. This is how you can do it. Kevin Holman has a wonderful name for this. He calls it forklifting. And one of the beauties of this is that it takes the monitor. In this case, there's about 8 things or 10 things you can actually do. Monitors, rules, discoveries, overrides, tasks, diagnostics, recoveries, views, folders, and string resources. And you can actually create from any of those. Sorry, throat was getting a little dry there. So let's just see what happens if we do this. So I'm going to click on this monitor. I'm going to say create fragment. And that brings up this create management pack fragment window. And what it has done is it has taken everything that's necessary to support that monitor. So we have a module type, a probe action module type that it has extracted out because we needed that as well. There's a script in here. It's copied that in. Let's skip over the script. We have a unit monitor type here that was created with its configuration, its implementation there. And then here under monitoring, we actually have the unit monitor that we had pointed to. So we've copied that in, plus everything it depends on, and everything it uses. For instance, it creates an alert, so it has the string resource for the alert. And under the language packs here, it has all the display strings that are defined for that monitor and everything that it includes. And I think we probably even have a knowledge article down here. So we've taken literally this whole monitor and everything it needs, and we've extracted it out, all in one click. From here, we would normally parameterize this. So for instance, we don't want to call this Microsoft SQL Server, of course, so we can highlight a section of text here, and we can say add parameter from selection. So it knows that we want to replace Microsoft SQL Server, and it knows we need a name. It hasn't got one. Now I'm going to click here, and I'm going to call this, let's just call it app name. And I'll click OK, and it's substituted in app name everywhere Microsoft.SQL Server was used in there. There will be cases where you may not want that. This run as credentials, in fact, would not substitute well. So, borrowing things from Microsoft is not necessarily in your best interest. You may have to do some additional editing. We do provide an Edit XML button here, so you can come in and do additional editing if you need to. But the general point of this is that you can select various parts and pieces of it and make a parameter for them. Let me go down here to give you some examples here. Frequency. This is obviously checking once a minute. If I say add parameter from selection, it saw frequency was the tag around that, and chose frequency selection seconds as a value, or sorry, as a name for a parameter here, and we can substitute that in. But while we have this open, let me just describe what these buttons over here do. Recent is a list of parameter names that you've used recently. So this is just a convenience for the names you've used and are likely to reuse. Down here we have all, which is the list of all the parameter names that have been used in all of the fragments in your library. The idea here is that if you want to use a service, you would want to reuse things like service name so you're consistent with other things. Browsable is a list of parameter names which, when you're doing the import, will allow you to browse things. So class ID will bring up a browser that will let you select classes. Counter name brings up a performance counter browser, event ID, the rest of these. And these names can be used as, if you need more than one, so you may actually have multiple event IDs, you know, an error event ID and a clear error event ID. So one's raised when something goes into an error state, the second's raised when it comes out of error state. So you can create parameters, and one could be called first event ID, a second be called second event ID. And as long as the import wizard sees event ID either as a prefix or a suffix on the parameter name, it will put up the browser for you. So let's import, let's change that. The other thing I want to do here is you don't have to select text. You can add parameters from scratch, and then you can tell it what to put in. You can rename parameters. You can remove parameters. I'm not going to show any of that right now. They're pretty straightforward. You can also edit the header. Let's just go back to the top so we see the header. We have automatically filled in some of this information. We've filled in the referenced management packs that are required here. We will fill in the parameter names. As you add them, we add new ones here. We also have placeholders here for description, version, and last modified. We can edit the header, and we can put a description in here, and we can say forklifted from SQL 2014 monitoring as an example here. We can specify a version number if we want to. We'll just leave that as 1.0. And we have a last modified date. And every time our dialogues are used to modify your fragments, we would update the last modified date for you automatically. And as you can see, the stuff I've typed in there goes in there. Now I'm just going to save this guy and save as. I want to come up and I want to go into my fragments because I don't want to go stomping over other things. So actually, let's just call this forklifted. You noticed I deleted that one from yesterday's webcast there. Now, if we go to here to import and I do search, you'll now see that forklifted shows up there. It's been put into the index and you can search for it. That's all automatically been taken care of for you. Browsable parameters, just looking over my list here of things to discuss. All right. Time is pretty good here. There's sort of two more things we can do. We have a button here to edit fragment, and that will, by default, select the previous fragment you've been working with, so it's convenient if you need to make multiple changes to a fragment. You may want to edit it, try and import, see what does or doesn't work, come back and edit it. Very convenient that way. You can search and you can, or browse, and you can change the fragment that you're editing. The rest of this I think will look all fairly familiar to you in that you can, select text and add parameters and edit the header, all that sort of stuff. The difference between the create, we had only a save as choice. Here for edit, you do have just a save choice, and it'll save it back to the same place. So if we were to change this to, edit the header, change this to 2.0, save that, save, come back here, import a fragment, and we will import forklifted. We'll see we get version 2 this time. And the other thing we can do is we can add to a fragment. So we've already created a fragment with this monitor in it. Let's just select another rule here, or select a rule. I'm going to choose this space-free megabytes, and I'm going to add that to a fragment. I have to select a fragment I'm going to add it to. I'll select my forklifted fragment, And again, we've done a merge, like I described earlier with the combine. We have put the rule in here now. And then we've got lots of scripts in here, so it'll be a little harder to find. That's the module types. So let's just go to the bottom of that script. That's probably the script for the monitor, but I'm not certain. If the rule was using a script, it'll also be up here. Okay, there's the end of one. There's a condition detection. Here's another data source, free space perf. So this would be the data source used for the rule. That's been incorporated in here. Again, big script here. And our module type. So just to want to show that the rule is in here. And, well, there's rules. So there's our rule. It was included in and is combined to make a more complex fragment. We save that, and if we were to come back and actually import that fragment again and we were to select forklifted, you would see that this is the combined forklift with both the monitor and the rule in it. And Lord help me try to actually find the things in here. But it's definitely in there. Monitors, there will be a rule there somewhere. Oh, there it is. So there's the rule being defined, there's the unit monitors. So we've got the combined version of both of those. So that pretty much covers everything I had intended to talk about here. Our time looks pretty good.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, speaking of time, we've got about 11 minutes left. There's a couple of survey questions I would like to submit here. So I'm going to, or polls, sorry. After the session closes, you'll receive an email with some survey questions, and we really appreciate your taking the time to fill those out. So here is one of the polls. Have you ever authored your own fragment? So we realize, bringing fragments into MP Studio is brand new, but it's been around for VSA use. And so perhaps some of you have authored a fragment in the past. And hopefully with the new features and functionality we've added, more and more of the community will start authoring fragments and get those up on GitHub and share them for the community. So at this point, we've only got about 40% of you answered that question. Nobody has confessed that they've authored a fragment just yet. Okay, I'm going to share that up so everybody could see that. And there it is. So we've got about 65% answered that, and nobody had authored their own fragment. But by all means, this will help you. You can use that forklifting to do all the heavy work, and then you can go in and import the fragment to do the more fine-tuning, more surgical type things to populate all those parameters for you. So I just have one more thing I'd like you to do for us, Mike, and that is I would like to see how long it takes to create an MP start to finish. I realize you're doing talking and everything as you were going through that, but could you demonstrate what it would be like? And there's your next poll. Let's see, what do you think? How long would it take, Mike, to create a complete management pack, start to finish, something with discovery, rules, monitors, whatever else you want to put in there, but just to give us an idea, if you were tasked with creating say an MP for your printer or something like that. Do you mind doing that for us?
I can give that a try.
Okay, that'd be awesome. So I've got my iPhone out. I'll close this poll up, but right now let's share that and we'll see. I'll share with you what the team here, or the attendees are looking at. Here's what we're thinking. So, somewhere between 2 to 5 minutes, but it's very normal, I think, to expect more than 10 minutes because, if you've ever created an MP, it's not a simple task, but our goal here is to make it a lot easier. So let's do this. Mike, I'm going to start the timer when you are ready.
Okay, well, let me just close a couple windows here. What I'll do is I'll go through it quick, but I'll try not to be racing too much. Did I give you a fair idea of what you could do with a little practice? So start your timer then, Randy.
Okay, we're running.
So we'll create the new management pack. We'll call this one silent.fast. And we'll go next, 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 and finish, because I happen to know those choices are all good here. So let's import a fragment, and we want to do a discovery for a registry value exists. So here we are. We've already filled in select. This will be our fast application name, so I'll change that. And let me browse, and I'll actually go and find some software here. Let's just see what I want here. FileZilla must be installed. Sure. There we go. We're going to find FileZilla being installed on this machine. Those are the three parameters I needed to specify. One was already set, one I changed and will be there for the rest of them, and the registry values, so import. So that gives us our class and discovery. Well, now we need to monitor that. So we'll search again, and I'm going to look for monitors, and let's look for a performance monitor here. Two-state consecutive monitor here. It's filled in our class here automatically, but we do have a browser for that, as you can see. And we have the object name we want to look for. Now I'm just going to use processor here, processor, and we use the total of user time. Actually, yeah, let's just do that. I would normally use something somewhat different than that, but this is an example. You know, we've gone through our browsing. We can change our frequency that we sample at 5 minutes. Actually, 5 minutes sounds good, but we do have the browser for it, and we have the ability to specify what our threshold is and how many consecutive samples and how is this being used. So we're looking for idle time greater than 80% for 2 consecutive samples. That seems reasonably good. So we'll create the monitor. Let's create a rule now. So we want a rule. How about an alert generating from the event log? So we filled in our classes and our names here. So we need our event source information here. So we'll go to our event. It takes a second to actually read it in. It's application. We're going to choose something other than the default here. And we'll choose one of the existing event IDs. And we'll click. And that's really all we need to specify. And we'll import that. And let's get some views in here as well. Kevin's actually got a really good fragment for views, and it's already filled in everything. So we'll import that, and I think we're done. Randy? In that time, we created a class, a discovery, we've got a monitor, we've got a rule to collect some data, and we've got some view information. How long did that take?
That's awesome, Mike. That's 3 minutes and 12 seconds, which is fantastic. So as the director of sales, I don't think I'd do quite as good, but I'm sure I could do that in under 5 minutes, build an MP for my printer. So that's excellent. I'm just going to shut this webcam off here. Okay, so I don't see many questions coming in. I'd like to encourage that. If you have any questions, we still have some time left. We've got, a solid 4 minutes here. We're happy to stay on longer if you have questions. I am just going to, let's do this. I'm going to send in the chat window a link to an authoring course that we're running. So we're running a level 200, 300, one-day authoring course. So the first one is June the 20th. This is geared at EMEA time zone friendly. So for us, it's a 5 a.m. start here in Canada and North America. And then we'll run a second course on the 22nd. And
actually, Randy, you got the backwards. The 20th one starts at 9 a.m. Eastern. The 22nd one is the one that starts at 9 a.m. UTC, so 5 a.m. Eastern.
Yes, that's correct. So the first one is 9 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ken has just asked, are there additional fragments created by Silac that aren't created by Kevin Holman? We actually have 2 of them right now, and I'll just bring those up here. You still see my screen, right? So we'll just search for the like fragments here. We have a process monitor with discovery and alert view that we've created, and we have another one here, an SNMP poll OID value, and it passes the results through a PowerShell. And this is useful if you've got a device which returns something which is not numeric or not entirely numeric. If the hover text will come back up here. It doesn't want to. There it is. For instance, if you had a device that returned a temperature as 31.2 C, Operations Manager won't let you do anything with that numerically, but you can pass it through a script to strip that and turn it into a number, at which point Ops Manager can do all sorts of things with it. So we have those two today. We will be adding more. You know, fragment creation is not necessarily our main goal here, but there will be cases where customers are asking for a feature that's easier to implement by creating a fragment and pushing that up. So those will become available, and we do hope to have you know, community submissions in there soon as well.
Excellent. Okay, so on that note, I am going to stop the recording. We will stay on for a couple more minutes. I did send a link in the chat window to the web page where we are providing the registration link. Okay, so the cost if you were to just sign up without that discount code is $4.95 for the day. With the discount code, you'll save $200, which is pretty cool. So we'll cover a lot of great topics, but the agenda is there on the web page. You can check that out. If you would like to have a one-on-one full demo of the other features in MP Studio, all the lifecycle management stuff, you can email me. I'm going to send my email address as well, and you'll have that. Happy to do a one-on-one presentation. And when we close the webinar, you will have an opportunity then to complete the survey. It will also be sent in email, so I'll ask you to just take a few minutes and answer those. I believe there's about 5 questions.
You're welcome, Ken.
Okay. Excellent. Well, on behalf of Silex Software, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Mike, thank you very much. Ian, thank you very much for joining us to answer questions. We didn't have too many today for you, but once again, on behalf of Silex, thank you everyone for joining us. If you have any questions, we look forward to answering those and working with you in the near future.
Thanks, everyone.